I've spent a lot of time working on personal privacy technologies, but people that would be the users of personal privacy usually don't want to pay any money for it. And so if you want to actually make a living, you have to sell to enterprise. And so the problem of providing privacy for enterprise is somewhat different. It's it's a collection of people. I guess you could say that, like, the collective privacy of everybody in the enterprise adds up to the privacy of the enterprise. It's sort of like, when the Sony hack happened, there were personal emails, or, there were all the emails of the people who worked in the making movies for Sony were exposed, and so, it's kind of a combination of their personal privacy and the institutional privacy. Well, anyway, you have to work very hard to make things airtight for secure communications. In the last 12 years or so, I've been working mostly on secure telephony. Most people know about my work in developing secure email protocols, but secure telephony is more fun. I mean, if you want to whisper in someone's ear from 1,000 miles away, I can help you with that. But when you start adding compromises in order to comply with regulations that enterprises have to comply with, you have to have data retention, and that's sort of at cross purposes with secure communication. You're not supposed to let wiretappers in, but the enterprise wants to record all the traffic and store it for regulatory compliance. So, I came across a sort of a comedy sketch I saw on YouTube on I think there was some corporate meetings where they told some expert that he had to draw 6 red lines or 7 red lines that were perpendicular to each other, drawn in blue ink, but they had to be red. And you can search on this in Google, expert red lines or something. And it's very hard to achieve those contradictory requirements. Well, let me talk about, first of all, how to do secure communications that provide end-to-end security for individuals, and how do you make it resistant to quantum computing, and then we'll talk about how do you adjust that for the enterprise. I don't see that quantum computers are quite as near as what we've been seeing in the press lately. I think it's a little bit further off, but it takes a long time if we're going to come up with public key algorithms that can withstand quantum computers. It takes decades. It takes 20 years to vet them and to have people accumulate trust for them. And that's probably about the same time frame as when quantum computers, if they do become a reality, then it'll probably take about that long for them to become a real threat for real operational communications. So the fear is not so much that quantum computers are here now and are able to compromise your communications today, but that your data will be stored for decades and then retroactively analyzed with quantum computers. So I have a protocol called ZRTP that I use for secure communications, and it doesn't have any post-quantum algorithms. It just uses ordinary public key crypto and ordinary hash functions and ordinary block ciphers. But I put them together in a way that that I think provides a certain level of resistance to quantum computers. I wasn't going to talk so much about this today, but I was kind of triggered by the discussion about quantum computers. I just wanted to say how I'm addressing that. What I do is with my secure telephony protocol, ZRTP, I do an ephemeral Diffie-Hellman exchange. I understand this is a security conference, so probably this audience knows what that means. You do an ephemeral Diffie-Hellman exchange, and you compute a session key. And then you do you don't share that session key with any servers. You do an end-to-end secure connection using that session key, and then at the end, you destroy the session key. What I'm doing with my protocol is, before I destroy the session key, I hash it with a non-invertible hash function, and I store that in a cache, and I use that the next time I talk to the same person. And then I do a fresh Diffie-Hellman every time, but when I'm computing the new session key, I mix the result, the Diffie-Hellman result, with the old cache material from yesterday. And that material, remember, it was computed with a one-way hash function, so it doesn't reveal anything about yesterday's key material. You mix it in with today's key material that you got from the Diffie-Hellman result, and now you have a new session key. And then at the end of the conversation, you do that again. You derive something from that session key through a hash, and you store it in the cache, replacing the old one, and you just keep doing this every time you talk with the same person. The nice thing about that is that this future NSA archive of all the material that they captured is not so easy to achieve, decades from now, to retroactively analyze things, because if they just miss one of your sessions, which is quite likely, when you're walking around with mobile devices in your pocket and you're talking with secure communication negotiations through the various ways through the internet, there's a good chance that the NSA hasn't intercepted everything. I say the NSA, I mean fill in the blank with whatever favorite powerful spy agency you're worried about. If you live in China, you're worried about the Chinese government. If you live in Russia, the Russian government. If you live anywhere else on the earth, the NSA, including China and Russia. So if the NSA misses just one of those sessions, they're not going to know what that cache material is. And all the sessions that come after that are going to be blocked from quantum computers analyzing them. The quantum computers are able to break public key algorithms, the Diffie-Hellman algorithm, whether it's elliptic curve or finite field Diffie-Hellman. But quantum computers can't break through AES or hash functions of the size that we use today. So there's a kind of a chain of hashed session keys that it's kind of a form of key continuity. And so you have to capture every one of those sessions and break the Diffie-Hellman exchange for every one of them. And if you miss just one of them, if you just aren't in a position to do the collection, the signals intelligence, where you just miss one of those, then you've lost. Every future conversation between those two parties will not be subject to quantum computers breaking the Diffie-Hellman exchange. So that means that with this protocol that I'm using for my secure communications work, it doesn't have any of the new exotic post-quantum public key algorithms like supersingular isogeny Diffie-Hellman. It's pretty conventional. It's still likely to be safe against future quantum computers, because future quantum computers are going to be used only to look at archival data that was captured, and it's not there's probably going to be gaps in it. So that's my sort of ad hoc way of dealing with future quantum computers until we come up with practical post-quantum public key algorithms. But anyway, I guess the main theme of the talk here is supposed to be about protecting enterprise. So what I'm finding is that over the years, I've gone through all this trouble to try to make protocols that are kind of fanatical in their design to try to keep the NSA out, right? If you look at the Snowden revelations, there's a list of products that the NSA has been able to break into. And conspicuously absent from that list is anything I ever designed. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. But these days, you know, at Silent Circle, we started out with trying to design things that way, this sort of no-compromise approach, and I'm finding that in order to sell to enterprise customers, we have to put things in that allows them to archive communications. And it kind of, you know, it kind of ruins the effect. You know, once you start archiving the communications, then it becomes possible for that to be hacked and exfiltrated from your servers, and all that effort you went through to protect the communications is for naught. But, you know, if that's what it takes to sell to enterprise, they're the ones that are the paying customers. That's what you have to do. By the way, are these time slots are about a half an hour each? Is that right?
You still have time.
Yeah, I know. I'm wondering if I didn't see a lot of Q&A in the other presentations. Are we able to get some Q&A?
What we are going to do is at 1 p.m. we are all going to sit here and have a chat with the audience and answer their questions. Okay. But if you want to have some questions now, you could just, you know.
Yeah, I really prefer to get some Q&A during the talk. It gives me an idea of what your interests are. If we do save them all for a panel later on, then I can't adjust my talk. It's already happened.
Yeah, we can simply ask a question. If anybody wants to ask a question, I can bring you the microphone right away. Okay?
On the other hand, it might not work because, you know, there might be a shyness in the audience, right?
Yeah, lack of coffee, maybe.
Yeah. You wanted to ask something?
Yeah, okay. Wait, I will bring you the microphone because we are streaming this session. So if people are watching us on YouTube, it would be really great so they could hear your question.
Yeah, referring to this, what you told before, that how you are going to, I would say, be resistant against quantum computers, and could you please elaborate how this generating this hash after each session and using it next time, how it's actually going to make things more difficult for quantum computers?
Sure. Okay, well, the biggest vulnerability that you get from quantum computers is the Shor algorithm for factoring. You know, all the public key algorithms that were the classic public key algorithms like Diffie-Hellman and RSA, their vulnerability, they become vulnerable if a computer can ever do fast factoring. I mean, Diffie-Hellman depends on the discrete logarithm problem, which is kind of related to factoring. You know, if you can do fast factoring, you can also compute discrete logarithms. So, on the other hand, the other algorithm, I think it's called Grover's algorithm, can be used against block ciphers, and they reduce the key space by it's a square root attack on the key space. So if you had a 128-bit key, then the key space would be reduced to 64 bits. That's why the AES has a 256-bit key. Because when they were designing the AES, they decided that if they wanted to make it quantum safe, then it would have to have a key space that if you cut the number of bits in half, the square root of the key space, you'd still be left with 128 bits. 128 bits of work factor for the quantum computers. So, and hash functions are the same, you know. So hash functions and block ciphers are pretty much out of reach of quantum computers, assuming that you have reasonable sizes. But public key algorithms are not safe. At least the classic ones, the RSA and finite field Diffie-Hellman and elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman. The new public key algorithms that have been studied for the last 20 years to deal with the possibility of quantum computers are terribly unwieldy. I mean, they are like lattices are used for some of these algorithms, and they just have absolutely massive keys. Like, we're talking about keys that have like 1,000,000 bits, a 1,000,000-bit key. So imagine if your public key was 1,000,000 bits. I mean, how unwieldy is that? And it's it's 1,000 times slower than public key algorithms that we use today. Maybe more than 1,000 times slower. So people don't like using them. I mean, they're so unattractive. Nobody wants to use them today. They would be forced to use them if we lived in a world with quantum computers. But right now, we don't. And so it's hard to motivate people to start using public key algorithms that have 1,000,000-bit keys and that run 1,000 times slower. Nobody wants to do it. And even if you could persuade people to do it, we haven't gained enough confidence with using these algorithms yet because we don't have the experience with them yet. I mean, they've only been examined by, a few theoreticians. And so it takes time. When Diffie-Hellman and RSA came out, everybody started studying them because they were attractive. They were practical size and could be done for, reasonable computing resources. And so everybody started looking at them, and everybody, over in a pretty short time, people had confidence in them because there were so many people trying to attack them. We don't have that much right now for some of these candidates for post-quantum computing environments. And so you're punished for using them by terrible performance. So nobody wants to use them. The best thing I've seen is this, the one that Jaya mentioned on her slide. It was the super singular isogeny Diffie-Hellman. That has reasonable sized keys and not as compact as we use for like elliptic curve keys, but it has reasonable sized keys. And it's fast enough that you could practically use it. So now we have to go through many years of building confidence in it. And that means that it has to actually be used in real world applications. And I think they're starting to try out experimental versions of TLS that would use it. So, that will attract some attacks, and we'll see how it stands up. But with the reason why the ZRTP algorithm, the ZRTP protocol, I should say, can be resistant to quantum computers without resorting to exotic post-quantum algorithms is because part of the security comes from the public key exchange, which is vulnerable to quantum computers. Shor's algorithm, which does fast factoring. But Shor's algorithm, the other quantum computer algorithms, like Grover's algorithm, doesn't get you very far with block ciphers and hash functions. So I'm using block ciphers and hash functions to strengthen the result of the Diffie-Hellman exchange. So what I do is I do a Diffie-Hellman exchange, I derive a session key, and then I use it to have a conversation. And then at the end, I'm supposed to destroy the session key. But before I destroy the session key, I derive something using a hash function from that, and I store that in a cache in a database. And the next time I talk to the same person, I do a fresh Diffie-Hellman exchange like I did always, like the first time. But I mix together the output of the Diffie-Hellman result, with the stuff that I stored yesterday when I talked to the same person. Well, if this omniscient intelligence agency was there and was able to capture that initial conversation, they could use quantum computers to break the Diffie-Hellman exchange. Then they would know what's in the cache. But what if they weren't there? What if they missed the first conversation? Well, then even though they could break Diffie-Hellman, they don't know what that thing in the cache is. And if you mix that in, they're not going to know what to do if they don't know what that is. So even though I'm not using a post-quantum public key algorithm, I'm taking advantage of operational constraints on an intel agency, especially an intel agency that's having to just resort to archival storage of data 50 years from now or 30 years from now, you know? If that's all they have, they can't adjust, they don't have a time machine. They can't go in and try to adjust what happened in the past. They have to work only with what they've archived. And if they just didn't get the first conversation, they're not going to know what the second conversation is, or the third, because we keep on recycling that. We keep on replacing what's in the cache with fresh material. Yeah. Well, it's 256 bits that I'm storing there.
Phil, could you repeat the question?
Oh, how large is the cache? You mean how large is the secret that we store in there? 256 bits.
I'm terribly sorry, but you might repeat that.
If there's not an alternate size of the cache, or if the cache doesn't, sometimes only store this and the next time store that, what's the possibility to brute force that?
Well, each cache entry would be 256 bits, and if you brute force that with a quantum computer, you get 128 bits of strength for a quantum computer. So the quantum computers would spend time of 2 to the 128th time steps. That's assuming that they're the ultimate quantum computers that you were talking about.
Universal.
Yeah. So, and that's the rationale why AES is 256 bits of key instead of 128 bits. I mean, we only need 128 bits of work factor. If quantum computers could not exist, then 128 bits would be enough for foreseeable architectures of computers. But you just have to double that space to 256 bits if you want to make it protect against Grover's algorithm, which is, the best you can do with quantum computers against a block cipher or a hash function. So, so that's what ZRTP has. And I put the key continuity features in there not specifically to protect against quantum computers, but because it's really nice to have key continuity. It's just a really nice feature to have for all kinds of reasons. But it also happens to protect you from quantum computers. If your opponent, the one who's equipped with quantum computers, misses one of the sessions, when I say he misses it, I mean he fails to intercept all the packets. So in most cases, your opponent develops an interest in wiretapping you at some point after your first conversation. They see that you're doing something that captures their interest, and they start intercepting your communications. Now, the NSA captures a lot of communications, even things that they're not interested in, because they want to retroactively look at it in the future. They did that, you know, in World War II, we captured a lot of traffic, Soviet traffic. The Soviets were using one-time pads, which are theoretically unbreakable. But the Soviets also used the one-time pad material twice. It was a two-time pad. The Soviet agency that was in charge of producing the one-time pads sold them to different branches of the Soviet military and sold them the same one-time pad material. They sold it twice, cutting corners, you know. And because of that, the NSA over many years, you know, after World War II, the NSA was created in the late 1940s, and they had this archive of material that they captured during the war, and I think it was around the 1970s that they were able to break it. And so it's called Project Venona. You could go on Wikipedia and look up Project Venona, and you'll see that they you know, because the Soviets misused one-time pads, they were able to retroactively look at stuff. So the NSA likes to capture things in the hopes of in the future being able to break it. So while I don't have the math background to develop, you know, public key algorithms that can withstand quantum computers, I think in practical terms, I tend to use the tools that are available to me, which are, you know, block ciphers and garden variety, either finite field Diffie-Hellman or elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman. But if you put them together in the right way, you can still be operationally safe against quantum computers in practical terms. So anyway, so that means that today, if you use like Silent Phone or other products, Whisper Systems has Signal. They use ZRTP also. And you know, I think there's a couple of other products out there that use ZRTP. And so if you're using that and you use the key continuity feature, then you're probably okay against practical application of quantum computers. But someday the collection techniques will improve to the point where they can capture all the traffic, even the first conversation. So we do have to develop post-quantum public key algorithms.
Right.
So,
Phil, a quick one, so we could better understand. Algorithms are more or less, you know, paid by and sponsored by government agencies, and they are done in universities, etc., etc. I was under the impression that you created something quite new and quite strong and quite simple, like in a garage. Could we do that analogy that you did that, or this is a work of some larger scientist group or so? So hashing with the previous, mixing those.
well, you know,
has it been done before on?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if others have done it before. I mean, I'm just trying to use the sort of
Existing infrastructure.
existing things that, you know, we have in crypto. You know, the meat and potatoes of crypto are, you know, public key algorithms, block ciphers, and hash functions. And with that, you can make a lot of stuff. I mean, key derivation functions are really cool. You use them a lot, and they're mostly based on hash functions. And so, you know, and then there's blockchains. You know, blockchains are a big thing now, right? Those are all based on hash functions. In fact, hash functions are just, if you forced me to choose, could I just have one tool, you know? I had to abandon every other crypto primitive. I would just say, just give me a good hash function, and I'll, you know, give me a lever and a place to stand, and I shall move the earth, right? So give me a good hash function, and I'll make everything I need out of it.
So, but you have a favorite one, if you would have just one option and one algorithm, which would it be? or you would develop yours?
Well, fortunately, we aren't forced into making a choice like this. We do have other components to work with. But yeah, I would just pick a good hash function. I mean, Dan Bernstein even has some hash functions. But NIST has some great hash functions now. They had some not so good ones back in the early 90s. SHA-1 was weak. But what happened is that when SHA-1 was broken, everybody suddenly realized that they didn't understand hash functions. Adi Shamir said that one night he went to bed thinking that hash functions were the best understood area of crypto, and the next night when he went to bed, he felt that hash functions were the least understood area of crypto. That turning point was what motivated the new NIST SHA-3 competition.
Okay. Because it always comes down to developers. Now, one thing is boss tells you have to encrypt this and that with that kind of level, blah, blah, blah. And another thing is what developers find themselves. What do they trust? What are the KPIs of these algorithms? Is it fast? So we will have to decipher lots of those on the server for the public services, blah, blah, blah. So there's tons of things taken into consideration. Of course, P2P messaging or something between governmental instances, it can consume a lot of computing power. It can be quite direct and used for only one purpose. But the best things happen when these things become available and understandable by the developers, actually. They could build better products.
Yeah, it's going to be a while before developers understand these post-quantum public key algorithms that are the candidates now. And I mean, when I developed PGP in the early 90s, I was just barely able to figure out how RSA works. But I didn't put any elliptic curve algorithms into PGP because the math was too hard for me. I'm a software engineer. My approach to crypto is, applied crypto. I'm not a theoretician. So I didn't understand the mathematics of elliptic curve, so I didn't put them in PGP.
Right, and at that time, maybe the easy-to-download frameworks were not available,
Yeah, and now that we have some really nice elliptic curve algorithms, I mean, in fact, Dan and Tanya developed one for silent phone, and it's really nice, But now that we have this, now we're starting to be forced to move away from them because of the threat of quantum computers.
Phil, this is my way and the way the organizers would like to thank you very much for your time. I personally would like to thank you for PGP. And here's a little gift, and of course the nice little certificate you could hopefully hang on the wall. Right.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Right, but you don't leave a stage. Just come around here, take a seat.